Hey everybody, it's JJ Talks, and it is Thursday on the Breakfast Club, Thursday night, but it is still Thursday. So, anyway, um, I will say I have had a little bit to drink tonight, so everything that I'm about to say could sound really stupid. Um, but I think most people who follow the Breakfast Club think that everything I say is stupid anyway, so maybe it won't make much of a difference. But just as a disclaimer. Um, I didn't post last week because I was in Chicago at a conference, International Writing Center Association conference, where I was doing a presentation. And it's kind of like inspired me to want to talk about academia and the toxicity and hypocrisy that just like is rampant through academia. And I know this might seem not necessarily relevant to people who aren't in that field, or are not, because are just not, oh my god, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, are not in academia in general. But I do think it has ramifications that definitely carry over into real life, especially when it comes to like social justice, in my opinion. So I think academia is very hypocritical, and it's so funny because I was like, a lot of times, especially when we're in the context of the writing center or in the context of liberal arts or linguistics, we have like a lot of conversation about like embracing language diversity and the fact that standard English isn't really a thing that exists objectively, and like that different languages are not inherently like less intelligent than standard English, um, which is great and all. But people like, you know how many papers I've read in hegemonic academic like discourse that explain why you shouldn't use hegemonic academic discourse. And I have a friend right now, and she's a Indian international student, and she works at the writing center, and she's very into like the idea of decolonization and how we can like decolonize academia. And she's had some people supporting her, but the people who are supporting her in academia are also telling her like, well, you shouldn't resist our form. You should write about how you should resist our form through our form, if that makes sense. And it's just so ridiculous. And at IWCA this weekend, Tofu, stop it. Hey, um, my panel was like kind of related to language diversity, and one of the presenters on my panel made a joke during her presentation, and there's a deaf woman in the audience, and the interpreter missed the joke and asked the presenter, hey, can you repeat this joke? And the presenter refused to repeat it, and then someone in the audience was like, it doesn't matter, let's just move on, it doesn't matter. And it was just like so insane to me, because on this panel about diversity, you're excluding your deaf colleague from the conversation. I was like, I would have said something if I wasn't so floored. Like, I was shocked. I was furious. I felt so, like, I went up and apologized to the woman after, because I was like, holy shit, like, we have a lot of work to do. But it's just so funny to me, because a lot of people in academia, if we talk about, I'm trying to think of an example, like Chomsky is a huge anarchist, right? And I support, like, he's a very great linguist, but academia in itself is very capitalist. Not only in like the financial strain it takes to get to a position of power, but also what kind of thought is acceptable or unacceptable, and like the fact that you have to engage in certain rhetorical, like very, very specific rhetorical strategies to even be heard or considered or not laughed at. Um, it's so elite that they will find any reason to exclude people from a conversation about inclusivity. And it's just so toxic and horrible. And I don't know. I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking about how ridiculous it is because it's, you know, I obviously like have an issue with everything being like I love theory, but I also love, at some point I'm like, okay, let's stop talking about theory. Let's talk about how we can make this practical. But I don't know. I just, gosh, I'm trying to think of what I was trying to say. It's just, it's such a toxic environment. It's so hypocritical, and like, it makes me worried because I want to continue. Like, I want to get my PhD. And to do that, I will have to, in some ways, subscribe to this environment and perpetuate it. And I don't want to. And, in the ways that I can try to, push back. But in order to get to a place where I'm even allowed to push back, I have to give in. And it's just like, and the way that it carries over into, the average person is the like elitization. I don't even know if that's a word. The making elite of certain issues, especially when we talk about social justice. And I think that a lot of the pushback against social justice is because it's being articulated and publicized by universities in a language that is not accessible to the average person. And therefore, this idea of social justice comes hand in hand with like elitism and thought capitalism almost. I don't know if that makes sense, but like it doesn't. And it pisses me off because I feel like the people that I know in academia who do this are smart enough to be able to switch languages from this, hegemonic academic discourse to a more accessible type of speech, general speech, whatever you want to call it. Because to be a successful like linguist, first of all, an effective linguist, but also an effective, person or rhetorician or whatever, you should be able to switch between different rhetoric styles and language styles. Like, I'm not going to go into, my, like, I'm not going to go into a club and speak in the same language that I'm going to in an academic context. And I'm not going to go to the club and then get mad at people for not speaking in an academic way. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what happens, is that they won't listen to anything unless it's in their language, even though in theory they're perfectly smart enough to switch languages. In my head, this is all making sense, like why this is frustrating and pissing me off. I'm hoping it makes sense to you guys too. But it's just been really frustrating. And I think that, especially because, I think that academia does make great discoveries and do, we do great things and we have great ideas, but we can't make those ideas into a reality if we keep acting like assholes. And those are my thoughts about the subject. And I appreciate you putting up with me for 8.5 minutes of this. If you did, you fucking rock. So, bye.